NEC Article 334.23 addresses the protection of conductors in attics or roof spaces of dwellings. It clearly states that all conductors shall be protected from physical damage when installed in these locations. The key phrase here is attics or roof spaces of dwellings. This requirement is not limited to specific types of construction or locations within the attic. It applies universally to all dwelling attics. This means that regardless of whether the attic is easily accessible or infrequently accessed, the conductors within it must be protected from potential physical damage. Now let's examine NEC Article 320.23, which often leads to confusion. This article specifically addresses the protection of NM, NMC, and UF cables installed in floor joist spaces or stud walls. It states that these cables shall be protected against physical damage by the overcurrent device. The crucial distinction here is the location. Article 320.23 focuses on floor joist spaces and stud walls, not attics or roof spaces. Therefore, while it mandates protection in those specific areas, it does not supersede or contradict the requirements of Article 334.23 for attics. A common misinterpretation arises when individuals attempt to apply the limitations of Article 320.23 to attic installations. The building official's argument, as presented, hinges on this misapplication. The building official suggests that since Article 320.23 addresses floor joist spaces, it somehow limits the scope of Article 334.23. However, this is incorrect. Article 334.23 stands independently, imposing a clear requirement for protection in attics, regardless of what Article 320.23 states about floor joists. The NEC defines an attic in Article 100 as the space between the ceiling of the top story and the roof. This definition is broad and encompasses all spaces that meet this description, regardless of their specific characteristics or usage. The definition makes no distinction between attics in dwellings and attics in commercial buildings. However, Article 334.23 specifically applies to dwellings only. Therefore, if a space qualifies as an attic according to the NEC definition and is located in a dwelling, Article 334.23 applies. The requirement for physical damage protection stems from the potential hazards that exist in attic environments. Attics are often exposed to temperature extremes, humidity, and the presence of pests. These conditions can degrade conductors over time, increasing the risk of electrical shorts, fires, and other hazards. Physical damage can also occur from accidental contact with stored items, maintenance activities, or even rodents chewing on the cables. To comply with Article 334.23, several methods can be employed to protect Romex cables in attics. One common approach is to run the cables through conduit. Conduit provides a robust physical barrier that shields the conductors from damage. Both rigid metal conduit, or RMC, and electrical metallic tubing, or IMT, can be used for this purpose. Another option is to install the cables in a location where they are not subject to physical damage. This might involve running the cables along the sides of rafters or joists, where they are less likely to be struck or abraded. However, this approach requires careful consideration to ensure that the cables are adequately supported and protected from other potential hazards. Additionally, using running boards can provide a degree of protection, especially in areas where the cables are exposed to foot traffic or storage. Running boards are essentially wooden planks that are installed over the cables to shield them from physical impact. It is important to note that the specific method of protection used will depend on the particular circumstances of the installation. Factors to consider include the type of attic, the presence of potential hazards, and the accessibility of the cables. Ultimately, the goal is to provide a level of protection that adequately safeguards the conductors from physical damage. In summary, NEC Article 334.23 mandates that Romex cables in attics of dwellings must be protected from physical damage. This requirement is not limited to floor joist spaces or other specific locations. It applies to all attics and dwellings regardless of their construction or usage. The building official's interpretation, which suggests that Article 320.23 limits the scope of Article 334.23, is incorrect. Article 334.23 stands independently, imposing a clear requirement for protection in attic environments. Ignoring this requirement can lead to unsafe conditions and potential electrical hazards. It is crucial for electrical contractors and inspectors to understand and enforce Article 334.23 to ensure the safety of dwellings and their occupants. When faced with differing interpretations of the NEC, it is always advisable to consult with qualified electrical engineers or other experts. These professionals can provide valuable insights and guidance, helping to ensure that installations comply with the code and meet the highest safety standards. Furthermore, it is important to stay up to date on the latest revisions of the NEC. The code is updated every 3 years, and these updates may include changes to existing articles or the addition of new requirements. By staying informed, electrical professionals can avoid making costly mistakes and ensure that their work is always in compliance with the latest regulations. Remember, electrical safety is paramount. Adhering to the NEC is not simply a matter of following rules, it is a critical step in protecting people and property from the dangers of electricity. Let's delve a little deeper into the specific types of physical damage that Romex cables might be susceptible to in attic environments. Firstly, temperature extremes can have a significant impact on the integrity of the cable insulation. Attics often experience very high temperatures in the summer and very low temperatures in the winter. These temperature fluctuations can cause the insulation to become brittle and crack, exposing the conductors beneath. Secondly, humidity can also be a major factor. Attics are often poorly ventilated, which can lead to high humidity levels. This humidity can corrode the conductors and damage the insulation, increasing the risk of electrical shorts. Thirdly, pests such as rodents and insects can also pose a threat to Romex cables. Rodents are known to chew on electrical wires, which can damage the insulation and create a fire hazard. Insects can also nest in attics and damage the cables over time. Fourthly, physical impact from stored items is another potential source of damage. Attics are often used for storage, and items can be accidentally dropped or moved around, potentially striking and damaging the cables. Fifthly, maintenance activities, such as repairs to the roof or HVAC system, can also lead to physical damage. Workers may accidentally step on or strike the cables while performing their tasks. Now let's examine the specific requirements for supporting and securing Romex cables in attics. The NEC provides detailed guidelines for how cables should be supported and secured to prevent them from sagging or becoming damaged. In general, cables should be supported at intervals not exceeding 4½ feet and within 12 inches of any box or fitting. This helps to prevent the cables from putting stress on the connections and also reduces the risk of physical damage. The support should be designed to hold the cable securely without damaging the insulation. Cable ties, staples, and straps are all commonly used for this purpose. It is important to avoid over-tightening these supports, as this can compress the insulation and potentially damage the conductors. In addition to the general support requirements, there are also specific rules for running cables through bored holes in wood framing members. The NEC requires that the cables be protected from abrasion where they pass through these holes. This can be accomplished by using grommets or other protective devices. The holes should also be drilled in the center of the framing members to minimize the risk of weakening the structure. When running cables parallel to framing members, the cables should be located at least 1¼ inches from the nearest edge of the member. This helps to protect the cables from being struck by nails or screws during future construction or renovation work. If the cables cannot be located at least 1¼ inches from the edge, they must be protected by a steel plate or sleeve. Now let's talk about some of the common misconceptions regarding the protection of Romex cables in attics. One common misconception is that if the attic is not readily accessible, the cables do not need to be protected. This is incorrect. Article 334.23 applies to all attics and dwellings, regardless of their accessibility. Another misconception is that if the cables are run along the top of the ceiling joists, they are automatically protected from physical damage. This is also incorrect. While running the cables in this location may reduce the risk of damage, it does not eliminate it entirely. The cables still need to be protected from temperature extremes, humidity, pests, and other potential hazards. Another misconception is that if the cables are already installed and have been in place for many years, they do not need to be upgraded to meet the current code requirements. This is also incorrect. The NEC is retroactive to some extent, and if the existing installation poses a safety hazard, it must be brought up to code. In the context of the question, it is worth emphasizing the importance of clear communication between electrical contractors and building officials. When disagreements arise regarding the interpretation of the NEC, it is crucial to engage in a respectful and productive dialogue. The goal should be to reach a mutually agreeable solution that ensures the safety of the installation while also complying with the code. Electrical contractors should be prepared to provide evidence and documentation to support their interpretation of the code. This might include copies of the relevant NEC articles, manufacturer's specifications, or engineering calculations. Building officials, on the other hand, should be willing to listen to the contractor's arguments and consider the specific circumstances of the installation. In some cases, it may be necessary to consult with a third-party expert to help resolve the disagreement. This could be an electrical engineer, a code consultant, or a representative from the NEC. Ultimately, the goal is to find a solution that is both safe and compliant with the code. Finally, let's reiterate the importance of using qualified and licensed electrical contractors for all electrical work. Electrical work can be dangerous, and it is essential to have the skills and knowledge to perform it safely and correctly. Qualified contractors are familiar with the NEC and other relevant codes and standards. They also have the experience and equipment to ensure that the work is done properly. Using a qualified contractor can help to avoid costly mistakes and ensure that the electrical system is safe and reliable. In conclusion, understanding and complying with NEC Article 334.23 is essential for ensuring the safety of dwellings. By protecting Romex cables in attics from physical damage, we can reduce the risk of electrical shorts, fires, and other hazards.